Hello and welcome to HR Live. With some of the challenges that have been presented by the recruitment market in recent times, led by sub 3.5% unemployment, it's really making it difficult for businesses to secure talent. So many businesses have turned their focus instead to retaining and developing their staff. And this means a real increase in focus on performance management, both for underperforming staff as well as key and integral staff members who are exceeding expectations. So, today we're going to break down why proactive performance management is so critical, the key considerations for your business, as well as exploring some of the potential consequences if your business gets this wrong. My name's Andrew Kalita. I'm the Operations Director of On Demand HR. And since 2010, we've been helping businesses of all sizes to navigate through Australia's complex industrial relations system. And throughout this time, we've appeared in more than 120 matters before the Fair Work Commission and other bodies. And it's truly this practical experience that goes well beyond theory that allows us to offer advice and insights to clients which balance risk on the one hand against the interests of the business. And this ultimately leads and delivers decisions and outcomes that are in line with the business objectives and not simply based around fear and mitigating risk. For you, HR Live is also a fantastic opportunity to put forward any questions that's impacting your business in the HR or workplace relations space. And if we can, we'll try and answer them live on the stream. However, if there's a little bit more detail to your question and we need to unpack it a little bit more, we'll try to cover the topic in a future session. Or alternatively, if you need a one-to-one response, we can give you an opportunity at the end of the session to schedule a free HR consultation that's supported by a strategic action plan with one of our team of experienced HR consultants. Okay, with the preamble out of the way, let's dive in to this week's topic. So, what is performance management and why is it important for businesses? Well, performance management, according to the University of Berkeley, is an ongoing process of communication between a supervisor and an employee that occurs throughout the year in support of accomplishing the strategic objectives of the organization. The communication process includes clarifying expectations, setting objectives, identifying goals, providing feedback, as well as reviewing the results. So it's a fairly detailed description and definition that we've given by the University of Berkeley. It's really essential that organizations invest the time to accurately reflect upon, evaluate, and measure the performance of their employees at all levels against a specific set of criteria. So this process not only ensures the strategic objectives of the business and other stakeholders are being met, but will also have a direct impact on the organization's bottom line, as well as their ability to grow in the future. So it's very, very important. Now, of course, performance management can be done in both a formal and an informal manner, and both of them are equally as important. Informal performance management can be done frequently and in a variety of different ways, such as showing appreciation and public acknowledgement of your employees' hard work. Today, however, we're going to focus in a little bit more on the structured and formal performance management processes, as this is really the area that poses the greatest amount of risk for businesses in terms of compliance and potential claims. So, what are some of the key considerations when it comes to performance management? Well, traditionally, most people think about performance management, they think about a serious meeting to discuss an employee's performance or misconduct. However, this image is actually one of the key risks when it comes to successfully implementing performance management into a business. The real risk comes from only focusing on managing an employee's poor performance or poor conduct and forgetting to reward those employees that meet and exceed expectations. So it's really important to remember in your organization that you provide regular feedback to employees that are meeting or exceeding their expectations. And you want to consider as many ways as possible to celebrate and acknowledge their contribution in the organization. Else, you risk your top performers and your key personnel from being snapped up by competitive offers, particularly in a very competitive recruitment market where people are struggling to find people to fill their vacant positions. Your top performers are going to be their number one target. So don't make it easy for your competitors to make the grass look greener on the other side. So speaking of expectations, another risk to having an effective performance management process within an organization is having excessively subjective and dynamic, constantly changing expectations for your employees. Ask yourself this really simple question. How can someone be expected to achieve something that they don't know about? And it also something that can't be objectively measured. Time and consideration really needs to be given to setting objectives and clearly communicating what your expectations are, and also ensuring those expectations are in line with the broader objectives of the organization so that the employee can be shown a clear pathway towards success and understand what they need to do in order to get there. So once you've done the groundwork of clearly setting and communicating expectations, there's obviously going to be employees who perform well against these expectations. But of course, the reality is there are going to be employees who simply don't perform so well. For those employees that don't perform so well, there'll be times where you need to carry out a formal performance management process. And it's important that this is done in a correct and compliant manner, especially if there's a possibility that termination of employment may occur in the future. We need to remember that it's called a performance management process, not a don't come Monday process. So, with that in mind, let's now talk about unfair dismissal and general protections, which may rear their ugly head if you get your performance management process wrong. So, outside of being good management process from a HR perspective, there's some workplace relations considerations if you do get your performance management process wrong. And of course, I'm talking about unfair dismissal, which is an employment related claim that the employee can raise against the business. So, what is unfair dismissal? Well, Section 385 of the Fair Work Act defines unfair dismissal as being a dismissal that's harsh, unjust, or unreasonable. But what does this really mean? In order to get a better understanding of this, I think we really need to take a look at each of those three keywords individually. So, starting off with harsh, because the consequences for the employee were disproportionate to the gravity of the alleged offence. In simple terms, what we mean by this is that the termination of employment is, in fact, a serious consequence for the employee, and it may have a serious impact on their livelihood. And therefore, the reasons provided by the business to justify termination must be significant enough to warrant this serious outcome. For example, terminating an employee simply because they were 5 minutes late for work due to traffic that occurred once a year is likely to be considered by the Commission as harsh. Moving on to unjust. Because an employee was not guilty of the alleged offence on which the employer acted. So, this one, in my mind at least, is fairly self explanatory. If the employee was terminated for theft, for example, and can demonstrate on evidence that they, in fact, didn't steal anything, then in fact, the termination is likely to be considered unjust. Unreasonable, because it was decided on inferences or speculation that would not have reasonably been drawn from the issue before the employer. So, an example of this would be if an employer carried out a termination based on the complaint of another employee, but at the same time, they didn't bother to properly investigate the complaint and confirm that the allegations in the complaint actually occurred, well, then the termination is likely to be considered unreasonable. It's also really important to note that only one of these three elements is needed to demonstrate that a dismissal is unfair under the Fair Work Act. There are literally thousands of unfair dismissal cases which have all had very different circumstances and led to different decisions and outcomes at the Fair Work Commission. So, given all of this, we would also suggest it's a really good idea to seek some advice if termination of his employment is a possible outcome of your performance management process. So, what does the Fair Work Act consider when determining harshness? Well, Section 387 of the Fair Work Act sets out some key criteria for determining harshness. We start off with whether or not there was a valid reason for the dismissal relating to the person's capacity or conduct, including its effect on the safety and welfare of other employees. Whether the person was notified of that reason. Whether the person was given an opportunity to respond to any reason relating to the capacity or conduct of the person. Any unreasonable refusal by the employer to allow a support person to be present to assist at any discussions relating to the dismissal. And if the dismissal was related to unsatisfactory performance by the person, whether or not the person had been warned about the unsatisfactory performance prior to the dismissal. Now, please note, I emphasize around warnings is that there's no such thing as the 3 written warning rule. This idea is, to be honest with you, nothing more than an urban myth. Unless, of course, you've included such a policy in your company policy and procedure manual. But that's a whole topic for a future session. You may have noticed that much of the criteria that we've gone through relates to procedural fairness, the order of things that you do during the performance management process that leads up to the termination. It's really important to ensure that all of these elements are carried out correctly. And this limits the possibility and the arguments and exposure for your business for an unfair dismissal claim. So when it comes to carrying out a compliant termination process, it's a little bit beyond the scope of this HR Live. But we do have a lot of content available on our website that you can check out by visiting www.ondemandhr.com.au. Or alternatively, let us know in the comments, and please like and subscribe our channel so we can know that we need to cover this in a little bit more detail in a future session. So summing things up, the key takeaway from this session, I really think, is that proactive performance management is not simply just good HR business practice to develop and retain your staff. There are also consequences from a compliance perspective if you get this wrong. So it's really certainly something that your business should be standing up and taking notice of. And if you're not confident to carry out a performance management process, if you've got a tricky situation, we'd like to invite you to have a more detailed discussion regarding this or any other HR workplace relations issue that your business is facing. So let me introduce some of the other members of the On-Demand HR team who are going to tell you about some of the free options that are available to you. And that's about all for this week's session. Really looking forward to seeing you next Friday at 10 a.m., which I believe I'll be joined by Clinton Drell to speak about working from home arrangements and managing employees working from home, which is a really significant topic for 2022 and moving forward. Let me introduce you to the team now.
Does your business currently have a HR or workplace relations issue?
Are you unsure how to work through compliance issues but still achieve a good business outcome?
Why not take advantage of On-Demand HR's free 30-minute online consultation with an experienced HR consultant?
At the end of the consultation, we also provide you with a strategic action plan to resolve your current issues.
To see the types of matters we can help with and to schedule your consultation, please visit ondemandhr.com.au/advice.
We look forward to delivering certainty, confidence, and clarity for your business in your HR and workplace relations affairs.